days to keep this family afloat while you're out there. While I'm out there what? Supporting this family with a real job? Your father's little garage barely pays the electric bill. I pushed the door open. Both women froze. Jack, Elise said, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. I didn't hear you come up. Hard to miss World War III happening in my kitchen. I looked between them. Someone want to fill me in on what I apparently don't need to know? Sophie started to speak, but Elise cut her off. It's nothing, honey. Just some girl drama from Sophie's college. You know how it is. Mom's pregnant, Sophie blurted out, and she's been cheating on you with Dylan from the gym. The kitchen went silent, except for the rain against the windows. Elise's face went white, then red. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, like swallowing ice water. Sophie, go to your room, I said quietly. Dad, I'm 21. Go to your room. She looked between us, grabbed her backpack, and disappeared down the hall. Her bedroom door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. Elise and I stared at each other across the kitchen table that had seen better decades. She was wearing her expensive yoga pants and a fitted top that probably cost more than I made in a week. When had she started caring so much about how she looked? Is it true? I asked. Which part? All of it. Start with the baby. She sat down heavily, avoiding my eyes. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you. When? After you figured out who the father is? Her silence was answer enough. I walked to the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, mainly to have something to do with my hands. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. 23 years of marriage, and I was learning about my wife's pregnancy from my daughter during a fight. How long? I asked. Jack, please. It's complicated. How long? 3 months, maybe 4. She finally looked at me. It started as just, I don't know. He was helping me get in shape, and you were always working, and I held up my hand. Don't make this about me working too much. I work to keep this family together. In a garage that's falling apart, while I'm bringing home real money from the tech company. There it was. The thing that had been eating at our marriage for the past 2 years, ever since she got promoted to project manager. Suddenly, my hands-on work wasn't good enough. Suddenly, I wasn't good enough. So you decided to upgrade to a personal trainer. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Elise? Help me understand how you accidentally ended up pregnant by another man. She started crying then, but they weren't the tears of someone who felt guilty. They were angry tears, frustrated tears. The tears of someone who'd been caught. You want to know the truth? Dylan makes me feel alive again. He doesn't come home covered in grease, complaining about customers who don't pay their bills. He has ambition. Ambition. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we're calling it? He's opening his own fitness center. He has plans, dreams. He's a gym rat who sweet-talked a married woman into bed. Real ambitious. Elise stood up, her chair scraping against the linoleum. I'm not doing this tonight. I'm tired, and I have work in the morning. Some of us have been working all day. She paused at the kitchen doorway. I never meant for it to happen this way, Jack. But maybe it's for the best. Maybe we've both been pretending this marriage still works. After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the beer I hadn't opened. The rain kept falling, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed through the night. This city had been dying slowly for years, just like my marriage. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I went back down to the shop and found myself standing next to the Mustang I'd been restoring. It was a 1967 fastback, cherry red under all the primer. I'd been working on it for 3 years, planning to surprise Elise for our 25th anniversary. Now it just looked like another broken thing in a room full of broken things. My phone buzzed. A text from my old boxing coach, Frank. Heard shouting from the street. Everything okay up there? Frank lived 2 blocks away and had trained me back when I thought I might make something of myself in the ring. That was before I met Elise. Before I settled down and opened the shop. Before I became the kind of man whose wife cheats with her personal trainer. I texted back. Just peachy. Come by the gym tomorrow if you need to hit something. I almost smiled. Frank always knew exactly what to say. The next morning, Elise was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Like nothing had happened. Like our entire conversation had been a bad dream. Sophie emerged from her room around 10, looking like she hadn't slept. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. How long have you known? A few weeks. I saw them together at that coffee shop downtown, the one near Mom's office. They were close. Too close. She stirred her coffee absently. I confronted her about it, and she broke down and told me everything. Including the pregnancy? She took the test while I was there. She was scared, Dad. Really scared. I wanted to feel sorry for Elise, but I couldn't find it in myself. Did she say anything else? Sophie hesitated. She said she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep it. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to stay married. The coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever makes you happy. For once. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've spent my whole life taking care of everyone else. Mom, me, this business, everyone in town who needs their car fixed. When do you get to matter? After Sophie left for her classes, I spent the morning under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's Honda, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythm of diagnosis and repair. But my mind kept wandering to Dylan. I'd seen him around town, of course. He was hard to miss. Tall, muscled, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about paying bills or keeping a business afloat. He drove a custom motorcycle, some expensive foreign thing that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. He wore designer workout clothes and had perfect teeth. Everything I wasn't. Around noon, I decided to take Frank up on his offer. The boxing gym hadn't changed in 20 years. Same cracked mirrors, same heavy bags hanging from chains that squeaked when they swayed. Same smell of sweat and determination. Frank was in the ring with a kid who couldn't have been more than 16, teaching him how to keep his guard up. "Jackie boy," Frank called out when he saw me. "Figured you'd show up sooner or later." I waited while he finished with the kid, then climbed into the ring. Frank was pushing 70, but still moved like a fighter. His gray hair was buzzed short, and his hands were scarred from decades of training young men who thought they were tougher than they were. "So," he said, tossing me a pair of gloves, "want to talk about it or just hit things?" Hitting things sounds good. For the next hour, I worked the heavy bag until my shoulders burned and my knuckles ached through the gloves. Frank held the bag steady, not saying much, just letting me work through whatever was eating at me. Finally, when I was too tired to throw another punch, he handed me a towel. "Feel better?" "Not really. Didn't think so. This isn't the kind of problem you can punch your way out of." Frank sat on the edge of the ring. "You want to tell me what happened, or should I guess?" I told him everything. The pregnancy, the affair, the things Elise had said about my work, my life, my dreams. Frank listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. "How long you been married?" he asked when I finished. 23 years. That's a long time to build something. Also a long time to let it rot if you're not paying attention. He studied my face. "Question is, what do you want to do about it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight for it. Part of me wants to walk away. And part of me wants to make them both pay. All normal reactions. But here's the thing, Jack. You're thinking like someone who got sucker punched. You're reacting instead of planning." Frank stood up and started unwrapping his hands. "You want my advice? Stop reacting. Start thinking. What's the smart play here?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you're going to fight, fight smart. Don't just swing wild and hope you connect. Figure out what you want, then figure out how to get it." That evening, I decided to do some reconnaissance. Elise had texted that she was working late again, but I had my doubts. I drove downtown to the office building where she worked, a gleaming glass tower that looked out of place in our fading industrial city. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. I spent the next 2 hours driving around, checking the gym where Dylan worked, the coffee shops Elise liked, the restaurants where she might take a lover. Nothing. Finally, around 9 o'clock, I spotted her Honda at a motel on the outskirts of town, the Riverside Inn, a place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Dylan's motorcycle was parked right next to her car. I sat in my truck across the street, engine running, watching the lit window of room 237. Every few minutes I caught glimpses of shadows moving behind the thin curtains. My wife and her lover, playing house while I sat in the rain like some pathetic private detective. The smart thing would have been to leave. Go home, confront her in the morning, start divorce proceedings. The smart thing would have been to walk away with whatever dignity I had left. Instead, I got out of the truck and walked across the parking lot. I stood outside room 237 for a full minute, listening to the muffled voices inside. Elise was laughing at something Dylan had said, a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. It cut deeper than I expected. The smart play, Frank had said. Figure out what you want, then figure out how to get it. What did I want? Justice? Revenge? My marriage back? Standing there in the rain, I realized I wanted something simpler than any of those things. I wanted them to hurt the way I was hurting. I walked back to my truck and sat there until they came out an hour later. Dylan emerged first, cocky and relaxed, like he owned the world. He was even better looking than I'd thought. The kind of man who'd never worked a day with his hands, never worried about making payroll, never had to explain to his daughter why mommy was crying. Elise came out a few minutes later, checking her phone, probably making sure I hadn't called. She looked younger somehow, happier, the way she used to look when we were dating, before life got complicated. They kissed goodbye like teenagers, all hands and whispered promises. Then Dylan climbed on his bike and roared off into the night, while Elise got in her Honda and drove home to the husband she'd been lying to for months. I followed her at a distance, watching her practice her story for when she walked through the door. She'd probably complain about her boss, mention a project that was running late, kiss my cheek and ask about my day, like she actually cared. By the time I got home, she was already in the shower. I could hear her humming, actually humming, while she washed off the smell of another man. The sound made my stomach turn. I was pretending to read when she came into the living room, wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas. "How was work?" I asked without looking up from my magazine. "Exhausting. We're behind on the Morrison project, and my boss is breathing down everyone's neck." She sat on the couch next to me, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. "How was your day?" "Fine. Fixed Mrs. Patterson's Honda. Worked on the Mustang." "That's nice, honey." She yawned theatrically. "I'm beat. I think I'll go to bed early." I watched her walk toward the bedroom, this woman I'd shared a life with for over 2 decades. She moved differently now, with a confidence that hadn't been there before. Dylan had given her something I couldn't. The feeling of being desired, wanted, chosen. "Elise!" I called out. She turned back. "Yes? I love you." For just a second, her mask slipped. I saw guilt flash across her face, followed by something that might have been regret. Then the mask was back in place. "I love you too, Jack." But we both knew she was lying. The next morning, I called in sick to the shop and drove to the public library. If I was going to fight smart, I needed information. I spent 3 hours researching Dylan Martinez, his background, his business, his social media presence. What I found was interesting. Dylan wasn't just a personal trainer. He was also involved in several questionable business ventures, including a supplement company that had been investigated by the state for false advertising. He owed money to at least 3 different creditors, and his fitness certification had lapsed 6 months ago. More importantly, he wasn't just sleeping with my wife. His Instagram was full of photos with different women, all of them married, all of them older and obviously wealthy. Dylan had a type, and it wasn't young gym bunnies. He liked women with money and something to lose. I printed out everything I could find and drove to Frank's gym. "You look like a man with a plan," Frank said when I walked in. "Getting there." I spread the printouts across a table in his office. "What do you see when you look at this?" Frank studied the papers for several minutes. "I see a con man who's gotten comfortable. He's not even trying to hide what he's doing." He looked up at me. "Question is, what are you going to do with this information?" "I'm still working on that part." "Well, work fast. The longer you wait, the deeper this thing gets." That afternoon, I decided to get a closer look at Dylan's world. I drove to the gym where he worked, Fitness Plus, a trendy place in the upscale part of town where memberships cost more than most people made in a month. I walked in wearing my cleanest jeans and a polo shirt, trying to look like someone who belonged. The place was all mirrors and chrome, with motivational posters covering every wall. Techno music pounded from speakers hidden in the ceiling. Dylan was easy to spot. He was in the free weight area, training a woman who had to be in her 50s, but was dressed like she was 25. She was wearing enough jewelry to buy a car, and she hung on his every word like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. "That's it, Mrs. Henderson," he was saying, guiding her through a bicep curl. "Feel that burn? That's your body thanking you." Mrs. Henderson giggled like a schoolgirl. You're such a good teacher, Dylan. I don't know what I'd do without you. I watched them for 20 minutes, seeing the same routine I imagined he'd used on Elise. The lingering touches, the intense eye contact, the way he made her feel like the most important person in the room. It was a performance, and he was good at it. When their session ended, Dylan walked Mrs. Henderson to the front desk, his hand on the small of her back. Professional, but intimate. She scheduled another appointment for the next day, and left him a tip that looked like it was more than I charged for an oil change. I was about to leave when Dylan spotted me. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, walking over with the confident stride of a man who'd never been challenged. "Just checking out the gym," I said, thinking about joining. "Great! I'm Dylan Martinez, head trainer. What kind of fitness goals are you looking at?" Up close, he was even more irritating. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect skin that had never seen a day of real work. He smelled like expensive cologne and protein powder. "I used to box," I said, "looking to get back in shape." "Awesome. Boxing's a great workout. Very popular with our clients." He looked me up and down, probably calculating how much money he could squeeze out of me. "What's your name?" "Jack." "Nice to meet you, Jack. You know, I train several clients who are interested in boxing fitness. Maybe you'd be interested in some personal sessions?" "Maybe." "You been doing this long?" 5 years. Love every minute of it. There's nothing like helping people transform their lives, you know?" "I bet. You work with a lot of married women?" Something flickered in his eyes. "I work with all kinds of clients. Fitness is for everyone." "Sure it is," I smiled. "Well, I'll think about it and get back to you." "Sounds good. Here's my card." I took the card and left, but not before I saw Dylan pull out his phone and start typing. Probably texting Elise, telling her about the strange man who'd been asking questions. That evening, Elise was jumpy. She kept checking her phone and looking at me like she was trying to read my mind. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "Fine, just work stuff." She picked at her food. "Jack, have you been, I don't know, going anywhere new lately?" "Like where?" "I don't know, just anywhere." "Same places I always go. The shop, Frank's gym, the parts store." I watched her face. "Why?" "No reason, just curious." But I could see the wheels turning in her head. Dylan had told her about our meeting, and now she was trying to figure out if I knew something or if it was just a coincidence. After dinner, she disappeared into the bedroom to make a phone call. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. Urgent, worried, defensive. When she came back out, she'd made a decision. "Jack, we need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About our marriage." She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same spot where this had all started 2 days ago. "I think we both know things haven't been good between us for a long time. Have they been bad enough to justify cheating on me?" She flinched. "I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen, and it's still happening." "Yes." At least she wasn't lying anymore. That was something, I supposed. "So what now?" I asked. I think maybe we should separate, just for a while, to figure things out." "And the baby?" "I don't know yet. I need time to think." "Time to think, or time to figure out if your boyfriend is ready to play daddy?" Her face hardened. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about fair?" Fair would have been talking to me before you started screwing around. Fair would have been ending our marriage before you got pregnant by another man. "I know you're hurt." "Hurt doesn't begin to cover it, Elise. I'm destroyed. 23 years of marriage and you threw it away for some pretty boy with nice abs. It's not about his looks." "No?" "What's it about then? His sparkling personality? His deep thoughts about life and fitness? He makes me feel alive again. And I make you feel what?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Fine," I said. "You want a separation? You got it. But I'm not making this easy for you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you want out of this marriage, you're going to have to own what you did. No quiet divorce, no mutual separation. No, we just grew apart story for the neighbors." "Jack, please, I'm not done." I stood up, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences." That night, Elise slept in the guest room. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Frank's advice. What did I want? What was the smart play? By morning, I had my answer. I started with the money. While Elise was at work, I went to our bank and withdrew half of our savings, my legal right as a joint account holder. Then I drove to 3 more banks and opened new accounts in my name only. By the end of the day, I'd moved $23,000 out of her reach. Next, I called our credit card companies and removed myself as an authorized user on her cards, while adding restrictions to the joint account that required both signatures for withdrawals over $500. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about power. For months, Elise had held all the cards. The secret affair, the pregnancy, the decision about our marriage's future. Now she'd wake up to find that her safety net had some holes in it. I was back at the shop when she called. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed into the phone. "Protected my assets. You said you wanted a separation." "You can't just take all our money." I took half. That's fair, don't you think? I have bills to pay, Jack. I have responsibilities. So do I, like making sure I can afford a lawyer. The line went quiet for a moment. A lawyer? Did you think we were going to handle this divorce with a handshake and a friendly chat? We don't have to. Yeah, we do. You made sure of that when you decided to start a family with someone else. She hung up on me. An hour later, Sophie called. "Dad, what's going on? Mom just called me crying, saying you cleaned out your bank accounts." I moved some money to protect myself. That's what people do when their spouse cheats on them. She's scared, Dad. She thinks you're going to try to take everything. Good. She should be scared. Actions have consequences. This isn't like you. Maybe the old me was too much of a pushover. Maybe it's time for an upgrade. That evening, Elise came home with her friend Nina, a sharp-dressed lawyer who'd never liked me. Nina was one of those women who thought every man was a potential predator, and every marriage was a prison sentence waiting to happen. "Jack," Nina said, walking into my living room like she owned it. "We need to discuss this situation like adults." "Hello to you too, Nina. Nice to see you in my house, uninvited." Elise asked me to come, as her legal counsel. "Legal counsel?" I laughed. "We're not in court, Nina. We're in my living room. That could change quickly if you keep playing games with the finances." I looked at Elise, who was standing behind Nina like a child hiding behind her mother. "Is this how you want to handle this? Lawyers and threats?" "You started it when you took the money," Elise said. "I started it?" "I started it?" I stood up, feeling my temper rise. "I didn't start anything, Elise. You started it when you decided to cheat on me. You started it when you got pregnant by another man. You started it when you decided our marriage was disposable."
Jack, please.
No, I'm done being reasonable. I'm done being the understanding husband who takes whatever scraps of respect you feel like throwing my way. I looked at Nina. "You want to play lawyer? Fine. But understand something. I'm not the same man who's been getting walked on for the past 6 months." Nina stepped forward, trying to intimidate me with her 5'4" frame and designer suit. "If you think you can bully Elise into accepting whatever terms you want, bully her. I'm not the one who brought a lawyer to a family discussion. You're the one who's acting irrationally. Irrationally? My wife is pregnant with another man's baby, and I'm acting irrationally for protecting myself?" Nina glanced at Elise, who looked like she wanted to disappear. "Elise told me about the situation, but that doesn't give you the right to engage in financial abuse." "Financial abuse?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Lady, I've been financially supporting this family for 23 years while my wife built her career. Now she wants to leave me for her personal trainer, and I'm the abuser for making sure I don't end up homeless? The courts won't see it that way. The courts will see a cheating wife who got pregnant by her lover and then tried to take her husband. For everything he's worth. How do you think that's going to play?" Nina's confident expression flickered for just a moment. She knew I was right. "We're not here to fight," Elise said quietly. "We're here to find a solution that works for everyone." "Here's the solution," I said. "You move in with Dylan. I keep the house and the business. We split everything else 50-50, and you never ask me for another dime." "That's not reasonable. It's more reasonable than what you deserve." Nina stepped between us. "My client isn't going to accept those terms. Then your client can explain to a judge why she thinks she's entitled to half of everything I've built, while she was busy building a relationship with another man." After they left, I sat alone in the kitchen, drinking a beer and thinking about my next move. The money had been just the opening shot. If I was really going to fight this war, I needed to think bigger. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Tom Bradley, a private investigator I'd met through Frank. Tom was an ex-cop who specialized in divorce cases, and he had a reputation for being thorough. Tom, it's Jack Morrison, Frank's friend. I think I need your services. The next morning, I met Tom at a diner downtown. He was a big man with graying hair and tired eyes, the kind of guy who'd seen everything and wasn't surprised by any of it anymore. So, he said, stirring sugar into his coffee, your wife's cheating and you want proof. I already have proof. I want leverage. What kind of leverage? I told him about Dylan's business dealings, the other women, the expired certification. Tom listened without interrupting, taking notes on a small pad. This trainer sounds like a real piece of work, he said when I finished. How deep do you want me to dig? Deep enough to bury him. That's going to cost you. I don't care what it costs. Tom smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. I like a client with motivation. Give me a week. While Tom was doing his investigation, I decided to do some digging of my own. I started with Elise's computer. She'd gotten sloppy about hiding her tracks, probably because she thought I was too stupid or too trusting to look. Her email was full of messages from Dylan, and they painted a picture of a relationship that was more complicated than I'd thought. Dylan wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was also asking her for money. Baby, one email read, I hate to ask, but the landlord is breathing down my neck about the rent. Could you help me out just this once? I promise I'll pay you back when the new business gets going. Another message from 2 weeks later. The investors fell through on the gym expansion. I know you said you couldn't help anymore, but I'm desperate. Just a loan, I swear. And my personal favorite from just 3 days ago. I can't wait to start our new life together. Once you're free from Jack, we can really focus on building something beautiful. The baby is going to change everything. I printed out every message and put them in a folder. Then I kept digging. Elise's browser history was a roadmap of betrayal. Hotel reservations, pregnancy websites, searches for how to tell if husband suspects affair, and divorce laws in our state. But the most interesting search was from 2 weeks ago. How to prove paternity before birth. She was already planning her exit strategy. I was so absorbed in my detective work that I didn't hear Sophie come home from class until she was standing in the doorway of the home office. Dad? What are you doing? I closed the laptop quickly, but not quickly enough. Sophie had seen the printed emails scattered across the desk. Research, I said. Research into what? Mom's private emails? Your mother gave up her right to privacy when she decided to cheat on me. Sophie sat down in the chair across from the desk. This isn't healthy, Dad. You know what isn't healthy? Being married to a woman who's carrying another man's baby. I know you're hurt. Stop. Everyone keeps telling me they know I'm hurt, like that explains everything, like that makes it okay. I'm not just hurt, Sophie. I'm angry. I'm furious. And I'm not going to sit back and let your mother destroy our family without consequences. What kind of consequences? I looked at my daughter, this young woman who was caught in the middle of her parents' war, and I felt a moment of doubt. Was I doing the right thing, or was I just making everything worse? Then I thought about Elise and Dylan, laughing together in that motel room while I sat at home like a fool, and the doubt disappeared. The kind she deserves, I said. That weekend, I put my plan into action. I started by visiting Mrs. Patterson, the neighborhood gossip who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Jack, she said when she answered the door. How nice to see you. How's that Honda running? Like a dream, Mrs. Patterson. Actually, I was wondering if I could ask you about something. Of course, dear. Come in, come in. Her living room was exactly what you'd expect from a 70-year-old widow who'd lived in the same house for 40 years. Doilies on every surface, family photos covering the mantel, and the smell of lavender and old furniture. What can I help you with? She asked, settling into her favorite chair. Well, it's a little awkward. Elise and I are having some problems, and I'm trying to understand how long people in the neighborhood have known about her situation. Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. This was exactly the kind of conversation she lived for. Oh, honey, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially. I didn't want to say anything, but I've seen that young man on the motorcycle coming and going from your place when you weren't home. How long has that been going on? Months, dear. At least since the spring. And just last week, I saw them together at Miller's coffee shop, holding hands like teenagers. She shook her head disapprovingly. I thought about calling you, but I didn't want to interfere in your marriage. I appreciate your discretion, Mrs. Patterson. But now that everything's out in the open, I just want to make sure people understand what really happened. Of course, dear. What kind of woman carries on like that when she has a good husband at home? I spent an hour with Mrs. Patterson, carefully planting seeds of information that I knew would spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone in a 6-block radius would know that Elise Morrison was pregnant by her personal trainer and planning to leave her hard-working husband. My next stop was the coffee shop, where Sophie had first seen Elise and Dylan together. I ordered a coffee and struck up a conversation with the barista, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings who looked like she enjoyed a good scandal. You know, I said, sipping my coffee, my wife used to come here a lot with her personal trainer. Tall guy, rides a motorcycle. Oh yeah, Dylan. He's in here all the time with different women. Always the same routine. Sits in that corner booth. Lots of whispering and hand-holding. She rolled her eyes. Some people have no shame. Different women? Oh yeah, there's your wife, obviously. But also Mrs. Henderson from the country club, and that real estate agent, what's her name? Jennifer something? Always married women with money, if you know what I mean. I knew exactly what she meant. By the time I left the coffee shop, I had a clearer picture of Dylan's operation. He wasn't just a cheating personal trainer. He was a professional homewrecker, targeting wealthy married women and bleeding them dry. That evening, Tom called with his preliminary report. Your boy Dylan is quite the entrepreneur, he said. 3 different women are currently giving him money, including your wife. He owes back rent on his apartment, his business license is expired, and he's got 2 outstanding warrants for unpaid traffic tickets. What about the other women? Henderson, the country club wife, has been paying for his, quote, business expenses for 6 months. The real estate agent bought him a new motorcycle last month. And there's a third one, a doctor's wife, who's been funding his supplement business. Jesus. It gets better. None of them know about the others. He's got them all convinced they're his one true love, and that he's going to leave his current situation for them. Current situation? That's what he calls whoever he's officially dating at the moment. Right now, that's your wife. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. Elise wasn't just cheating on me. She was being conned by a professional. How much money has he gotten from her? At least $15,000 over the past 4 months. Probably more that we haven't found yet. $15,000. Money that had come out of our joint account. Money I'd earned fixing cars and running my business. Money that was supposed to be for our future. Tom, I said, I want you to document everything. Every woman, every dollar, every lie. I want enough evidence to destroy this guy. Consider it done. After I hung up, I sat in my truck outside the coffee shop, watching people go about their normal lives. Couples holding hands, families with children, ordinary people with ordinary problems. I envied them. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. I almost laughed. She was probably heading to another rendezvous with Dylan, another evening of playing house with her con man boyfriend, while her husband sat at home like a fool. But I wasn't a fool anymore, and by the time I was finished, everyone would know exactly what kind of people they really were. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday night at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of working-class bar where everyone knew your name and your business. I'd been going there since I was 21, back when Elise and I were newlyweds, and the future looked bright. Now it felt like a refuge, the only place in town where I could drink a beer without someone giving me pitying looks or whispering behind my back about my cheating wife. I was on my second beer when Dylan walked in. He spotted me immediately, and instead of leaving, like a smart man would have, he walked straight to my table. Jack, right? We met at the gym. I remember. Mind if I sit? I think we should talk. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. By all means. Dylan sat down, trying to project confidence, but I could see the nervousness in his eyes. He was younger than me, stronger probably, but he'd never been in a real fight. I could tell by the way he carried himself. All show and no substance. Look, he said, I know this is awkward, but I think we're both adults here. Are we? I care about Elise. A lot. And I know this situation isn't ideal for anyone. Situation. I took a sip of my beer. Is that what we're calling it? I never meant for it to happen this way. But sometimes life takes you in directions you don't expect. Life didn't take you anywhere, Dylan. You made a choice to sleep with a married woman. His jaw tightened. Elise was unhappy long before I came along. So you were doing her a favor? I was being there for her when her husband wasn't. The bar had gotten quieter around us. Other patrons were starting to notice the tension at our table, and in a place like Murphy's, that meant we had an audience. Tell me something, I said, leaning back in my chair. How many other married women are you being there for right now? Dylan's confident mask slipped for just a moment. What's that supposed to mean? Mrs. Henderson from the country club, Jennifer Walsh, the real estate agent, Dr. Peterson's wife, Sarah. Should I keep going? The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've got quite the operation going. Find lonely married women with money, seduce them, bleed them dry, move on to the next one. It's actually pretty smart, if you don't mind being a complete piece of shit. Dylan stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, I said quietly. Excuse me? I said sit down. We're not finished talking. There was something in my voice that made him hesitate. Maybe it was the 20 years I'd spent in this neighborhood, earning respect the hard way. Maybe it was the fact that half the men in this bar had known me since I was a kid. Or maybe it was just the look in my eyes that told him I was done being the nice guy. He sat down. Here's what's going to happen, I said, keeping my voice low and calm. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to stop taking her money. And you're going to disappear from our lives. I can't do that. Why not? Because I love her. I laughed, loud enough that several people turned to look at us. You love her? Which one? Elise? Mrs. Henderson? All of them? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're a con artist who preys on vulnerable women. The only thing I don't understand is why it took me so long to see it. Dylan's face was red now, anger replacing nervousness. At least I make her happy. When's the last time you did that? When's the last time you told her the truth about anything? I've never lied to Elise. Really? Did you tell her about the other women? Did you tell her about the money you owe all over town? Did you tell her that your fitness certification expired 6 months ago? His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Did you tell her that you've been promising to marry Mrs. Henderson as soon as her divorce goes through? Or that you told Jennifer Walsh you were ready to start a family with her? That's different. Different how? Those women, they're just... It's complicated. It's not complicated at all. You're a liar and a cheat, and you're using my wife the same way you've used all the others. Dylan stood up again, this time with more conviction. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by some washed-up mechanic. The bar went completely silent. In a place like Murphy's, calling a man's work an insult was like calling his mother a whore. It was fighting words. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the place. Dylan was taller than me, but I had 40 pounds on him and 20 years of hard living. More importantly, I had the home field advantage. Washed-up mechanic? I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. At least I earn my money honestly. At least I don't make a living seducing other men's wives. Jack, came a voice from behind me. Frank had appeared at my shoulder, probably sensing trouble. Everything okay here? Just having a conversation with my wife's boyfriend, I said, not taking my eyes off Dylan. He was just telling me how much he respects the institution of marriage. A few men chuckled, but it wasn't friendly laughter. It was the sound of a pack, recognizing an outsider. Dylan looked around the bar, finally realizing he was outnumbered and out of his element. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving. Good idea, I said. But before you go, let me give you some advice. Stay away from my wife. Stay away from my family. And find yourself a new town, because this one's getting a little small for both of us. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining the situation. You see, word travels fast in a place like this. And once people hear about your little business model, I don't think you're going to find many customers. Dylan's face went pale again. He was finally starting to understand that his carefully constructed world was falling apart. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo that Tom had taken of him with Mrs. Henderson outside a hotel downtown. "Can't I?" He stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked around the bar one more time. Every face was hostile, waiting to see what he would do. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yeah, it is." After Dylan left, the bar erupted in conversation. Frank bought me a beer, and half a dozen other men came over to pat me on the back and share their own stories about cheating wives and worthless boyfriends. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But the good feeling didn't last long. I knew Dylan would go straight to Elise, and I knew she wouldn't take kindly to being publicly humiliated. I was right. She was waiting for me when I got home, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "How could you?" she screamed the moment I walked through the door. "How could you embarrass me like that?" "Embarrass you? You embarrassed yourself when you decided to cheat on me." "That's not what I'm talking about, and you know it. Dylan told me what you said at that bar, in front of all those people. I told them the truth. You humiliated him. You humiliated me." "Good." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "Good? You heard me. You want to act like a cheating wife? You get to be treated like one. You want to date a con artist? You get to explain that to the neighbors." "Dylan isn't a con artist. Isn't he? How much money have you given him, Elise? That's none of your business. It's my business when it comes out of our joint account. It's my business when you're funding your affair with money I earned. I earn money too. Not enough to cover a $15,000 boyfriend, apparently." Her face went white. "How do you know that number?" "I know a lot of things. I know about Mrs. Henderson and Jennifer Walsh and Dr. Peterson's wife. I know about the expired certification and the unpaid debts and the promises he's made to other women." Elise sat down heavily at the kitchen table. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked truly shaken. "You're lying," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Am I?" "Call him. Ask him about the other women. See what he says." "He would have told me." "Would he? Has he told you anything that turned out to be true?" She pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment. Then she put it down without making the call. "Even if what you're saying is true," she said quietly, "it doesn't change how I feel about you, about us. No, it doesn't. But it should change how you feel about him. I'm still leaving, Jack. I'm still getting a divorce." "Fine, but you're not taking me for half of everything I've worked for. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when people find out what kind of person you really are, when they find out about your boyfriend's other girlfriends and your little money transfers, you're going to have a hard time convincing a judge that you deserve anything." Elise looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Fear. "You wouldn't. Try me." She stood up and walked to the kitchen window, staring out at the dark street. "I never wanted it to be like this." "Then you shouldn't have cheated on me." "I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every time you met him at that motel. Every time you lied to me about working late. Every time you transferred money to his account. Those weren't mistakes, Elise. They were choices." She turned back to me, and I saw tears in her eyes. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of a woman who'd been caught and was running out of options. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to admit what you did. I want you to take responsibility for destroying our marriage. And I want you to stop pretending that you're the victim here." "And if I do that? Then maybe we can end this with whatever dignity we have left." But even as I said it, I knew it was too late for dignity. We'd crossed a line tonight at Murphy's Tavern, and there was no going back. This was war now, and wars didn't end with dignity. They ended with winners and losers, and I was done losing. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Tom called while I was having coffee, his voice grim. "Jack, we've got a problem. Dylan's disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "I mean he's gone. Cleared out his apartment in the middle of the night, left town on his motorcycle. None of his clients know where he is." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "What about the other women? Mrs. Henderson and the rest?" "That's the problem. Turns out he cleaned them out before he left. convinced Mrs. Henderson to give him $20,000 for his new business venture just last week. Jennifer Walsh is out $30,000. Dr. Peterson's wife, Jesus, Jack, he got her for $50,000. $50,000? She mortgaged her house. Thought they were going to start a new life together. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Dylan hadn't just been conning these women for pocket money. He'd been planning an exit strategy, and my confrontation at Murphy's Tavern had accelerated his timeline. There's more, Tom said. I talked to a buddy of mine in the police department. Turns out Dylan Martinez isn't even his real name. He's David Mullins from Phoenix, and he's got warrants in 3 states for fraud and identity theft. Jesus Christ. Your wife was sleeping with a professional criminal, Jack, and now he's gone, along with a lot of people's money. After Tom hung up, I sat in my kitchen trying to process what I'd learned. Elise hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been conned by a career criminal. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sorry for her. And part of me was terrified about what this meant for the baby she was carrying. I was still sitting there when Elise came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept, her hair disheveled and her eyes red from crying. "Dylan's gone," she said without preamble. "I know." "You know?" She stared at me. "How do you know?" "I had him investigated, remember? My guy has contacts." She sat down across from me, looking smaller somehow. "He took money from other women. A lot of money. I tried calling him all night. His phone goes straight to voicemail. He's not coming back, Elise." "How can you be so sure?" I told her what Tom had learned. The fake name, the warrants, the pattern of fraud across multiple states. With each detail, she seemed to shrink further into herself. "I'm such an idiot," she said finally. "You're not an idiot. You're a victim." She looked up at me, surprised by the gentleness in my voice. "After everything I did to you, to us, you're still my wife. You're still the mother of my daughter, and you're carrying a child who's going to need stability, regardless of who the father is. The baby," she put her hand on her stomach. "What am I going to do?" "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I thought Dylan and I would figure it out together. I thought we had a future." "And now?" "Now I don't know anything." We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear the sounds of the neighborhood waking up. Cars starting, dogs barking, the normal rhythms of ordinary life. It seemed impossible that our world had been turned upside down while everyone else's stayed the same. "Jack," Elise said finally, "can you ever forgive me?" It was the question I'd been dreading, because I didn't know the answer. Could I forgive her for the affair? For the lies? For the pregnancy that might not even be mine? "I don't know," I said honestly. "Right now, I'm just trying to figure out how we move forward." "Do you want to move forward? Together, I mean. Do you?" "I don't know if I deserve that chance." "Probably not. But maybe that's not the right question. What is the right question? Maybe the right question is whether we can build something new from what's left." Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. Through the window, I could see a police car in our driveway. The officer was young, probably new to the force, and he looked uncomfortable as he explained why he was there. "We're investigating a fraud case involving a man who went by Dylan Martinez. We understand your wife had a relationship with him?" Elise nodded, her face burning with embarrassment. "We need to ask you some questions about any financial transactions you might have had with him." For the next hour, Elise had to detail every payment she'd made to Dylan, every lie he'd told her, every promise he'd broken. The officer was professional but thorough, and by the end of the interview, Elise looked like she'd been through a ringer. After the police left, we sat on our front porch, watching the neighborhood go about its business. Mrs. Patterson was watering her flowers, probably hoping to catch some gossip about the police visit. The mailman was making his rounds, stopping to chat with anyone who'd listen. Normal life. Continuing around the wreckage of our marriage. "Everyone's going to know," Elise said quietly. "They already know. Small towns don't keep secrets very well." "What are they saying?" "That you were conned by a criminal. That you're a victim, not a villain. Is that what you think? I think you made some bad choices, but I also think you were manipulated by someone who is very good at manipulation." That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. That afternoon, Sophie came home from college to find us sitting together on the porch, not talking, just existing in the same space, without fighting. "Is everything okay?" she asked, clearly confused by the lack of hostility. "Dylan's gone," Elise said. He wasn't who I thought he was." Sophie sat down on the porch steps, looking between us. "What does that mean for you two?" "We don't know yet," I said. "We're taking it one day at a time." "And the baby?" Elise's hand went to her stomach again. "I'm keeping it. Whatever happens between your father and me, I'm keeping the baby." "Do you know who the father is?" "Not yet, but I'm going to find out." That evening, after Sophie had gone to her room, Elise and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen again. It was becoming our place for difficult conversations, this table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the years. "I need to tell you something," she said, "about the money." "What about it?" "It wasn't just $15,000. It was closer to 25. I felt my jaw clench. $25,000? He said he needed it for the business. He said once we were together, once you and I divorced, we'd get it all back, and more. Jesus, Elise. I know it was stupid, but he was so convincing, so sure about our future together. Where did you get that kind of money? I took a loan against my 401k, and I used our credit cards. Our credit cards? I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to control my temper. $25,000. Money we couldn't afford to lose. Money that was supposed to be for our retirement, for Sophie's education, for emergencies. "We'll figure it out," I said finally. "What?" "The money. We'll figure out how to deal with it. File insurance claims, report it as fraud, whatever we have to do. You're not going to leave me?" I turned back to her. I should. Any reasonable man would walk away right now and never look back. But I'm not any reasonable man. I'm your husband. For better or worse, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. Remember those words? She started crying then, really crying, for the first time since this whole mess began. "I remember," she whispered. "Then let's see if we can figure out what they mean." The paternity test results came back on a Friday afternoon. Dr. Williams called personally, which told me everything I needed to know before he said a word. "Jack, I have the results. Do you want to come in, or would you prefer I tell you over the phone?" "Just tell me." "The baby isn't yours." I closed my eyes and leaned against the wall of my shop. Part of me had been hoping, despite everything, that the child would be mine, that we could pretend the affair had been a momentary lapse, that we could build our future around this new life. "Jack? Are you there?" "I'm here." "Does Elise know?" I called her first. She's pretty upset. "I'll go home." I found Elise in our bedroom, curled up on the bed, clutching the pillow Dylan used to sleep on when he stayed over. The sight of it made my stomach turn, but I pushed down the anger. "Elise?" She looked up at me with swollen eyes. "It's his baby." "I know. I'm carrying the child of a criminal who conned me out of $25,000 and disappeared in the night." "Yeah. What kind of person does that make me?" "It makes you human. It makes you someone who made mistakes. Huge mistakes. Yeah, huge mistakes." She sat up on the bed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happens now?" "Now we decide what we want our life to look like." "Do you still want me?" It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer. Did I still want her? The woman who cheated on me, lied to me, stolen from our joint accounts to fund an affair with a criminal? "I want the woman I married," I said. "I want the woman who used to laugh at my jokes and dream about our future together. I want the woman who cried when Sophie took her first steps and stayed up all night when she had the flu. That woman made some terrible choices. Yeah, she did. But she's still in there somewhere, isn't she?" Elise looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or hope. "I don't know," she said finally. "I don't know who I am anymore." "Then maybe we figure it out together. Even with the baby? Especially with the baby. That child is going to need parents who love each other, who can provide stability and security. Dylan's not coming back, Elise. It's just us now. You'd raise another man's child? I'd raise our child. Because that's what it would be if we decide to make this work. Our child, our family, our life. She started crying again, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of hope, of possibility. I don't deserve you, she said. Probably not. But marriage isn't about deserving each other. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. That night, we slept in the same bed for the first time in weeks. Not as lovers, not yet, but as two people who'd been through hell together and decided to try to find their way back. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee for both of us. When Elise came downstairs, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists. "What's that?" she asked. "Plans. Things we need to do if we're going to make this work." "Like what?" "Marriage counseling. Financial planning to deal with the money Dylan stole. A lawyer to make sure we're protected if he ever comes back. A plan for telling people about the baby." "You've thought of everything." "I've had a lot of time to think." She sat down across from me and looked at the list. "This is going to be hard." "Yeah, it is. People are going to talk. Let them talk. Some of your friends might not understand. Then they're not really friends. You could still change your mind. You could still walk away." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not walking away, Elise. We're going to figure this out together. Promise? Promise." 6 months later, Elise gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named her Grace, because sometimes that's what life gives you when you least expect it. Grace. Dylan never came back. The police eventually caught up with him in Nevada, where he was running the same con on a new group of women. He's serving 5 to 10 years in state prison, which seems about right. The neighborhood gossips had a field day with our story for a while, but eventually something more interesting came along, and we faded back into the background of ordinary life. Mrs. Patterson still waves when she sees us, and she absolutely dotes on Grace whenever we take her for walks. Sophie loves her baby sister fiercely, and has never once questioned whether Grace is really her family. "Family isn't about blood," she told me one day while she was feeding Grace a bottle. "It's about love." Smart kid. Elise and I are still working on our marriage. Some days are better than others. The trust is coming back, slowly, carefully, like a wild animal that's been hurt and needs time to heal. But we're both committed to the process, to the daily choice of loving each other despite our flaws and failures. The funny thing is, I think we might end up with a stronger marriage than we had before. When you've seen each other at your worst and decided to stay anyway, when you've weathered a storm that would have destroyed most couples, you learn something about the power of forgiveness and the possibility of redemption. I still run my auto shop, still fix cars for people who sometimes can't pay their bills. Elise still works at the tech company, though she's more careful about her friendships now, more aware of the people who might not have her best interests at heart. And Grace? Grace is perfect. She has her mother's eyes and her own unique personality that's emerging more every day. She doesn't know the complicated story of how she came to be part of our family, and she doesn't need to. All she needs to know is that she's loved, wanted, and cherished by the people who chose to be her parents. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm feeding Grace or walking her around the house to help her sleep, I think about Dylan and the other women he conned. I wonder if they've recovered from the financial and emotional damage he caused. I hope they have. I hope they've found their own versions of grace and forgiveness and second chances. As for me, I learned something important through this whole mess. Revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building a life so good that their absence doesn't matter. It's about choosing love over hate, forgiveness over bitterness, hope over despair. Dylan thought he was taking everything from me. My wife, my money, my dignity, my future. Instead, he gave me something I didn't know I needed. The chance to discover who I really was when everything was stripped away. Turns out, I'm the kind of man who stays. I'm the kind of man who fights for his family, even when that family looks different than he expected. I'm the kind of man who can love a child who isn't biologically his own and raise her as if she were. I'm the kind of man who believes in second chances.